Picture this. It is a Sunday afternoon, and you open your 401k app. The balance has grown since last month. You contributed consistently all year. The market cooperated. The number looking back at you is bigger than it was, and you feel the specific quiet satisfaction of someone who is doing the right thing with their money. You close the app. Here is the number you did not check. Not your balance, not your rate of return. A number buried inside the details of every fund you own. A number that has been quietly removing money from your retirement account every single year since the day you enrolled. Not in a way that triggers a notification. Not in a way that shows up as a separate line on your statement. Not in a way the human brain is naturally wired to notice. A percentage, a small one, that over 30 years of compounding does more damage to the average retirement account than most market downturns in history. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that number is, where it lives in your account, and what you can do about it in about 15 minutes. And you will never look at your 401k the same way again. If that sounds like something your future self would want you to watch right now, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. Every mutual fund and every ETF charges an annual fee. It is called an expense ratio. And unlike most fees you encounter in your financial life, this one is not billed to you separately. There is no invoice. There is no line item on your statement that reads, "Fee collected this month." The fee is taken directly from the fund's assets before the returns are calculated, before you see the number, before the app updates your balance. It is invisible by design. Here is how it works mechanically. You own shares in a mutual fund inside your 401k. That fund has an expense ratio of 1% per year. Every day, the fund manager takes 1/365th of 1% of the fund's total assets and uses it to cover operating costs, management fees, marketing expenses, and profit. The share price you see already reflects this deduction. There is no moment where you watch the money leave. It simply never appears in your return in the first place. Most people who have a 401k have never looked up the expense ratio on a single fund they own. They know their balance. They know roughly what the market did this year. They have never seen the number that determines how much of the market's return they actually keep. Here is the math, and I want you to actually feel this math rather than just understand it, because the numbers are large enough to change how you spend your Sunday afternoons going forward. Take two investors. Both put $10,000 into their 401k today and add nothing else. Both invest in funds that track the same market and earn the same gross return of 7% annually. The only difference is the expense ratio of the fund they chose. Investor A is in a low-cost index fund with an expense ratio of 0.05%. This is what the best index funds available today charge. After 30 years, Investor A has approximately $74,500. Investor B is in an actively managed fund with an expense ratio of 1%. This is common in many corporate 401k plans. The same $10,000, the same market, the same 30 years. Investor B has approximately $54,300. That is a difference of $20,200 on a single $10,000 investment. Not because of market timing, not because of investment skill, because of a 1 percentage point difference in annual fees applied over 30 years of compounding. Now scale that to a realistic retirement balance. If you have $200,000 in your 401k and you are 30 years from retirement, the difference between a 1% expense ratio and a 0.05% expense ratio on that balance alone is over $400,000 in final wealth. Same market, same contributions, same everything. just a different line buried in the fund details that most people have never looked at. That is not a rounding error. That is a retirement. So why are high-fee funds so common inside corporate 401k plans? Because the retirement plan industry does not work the way most people assume it does. Most people assume their employer selected the funds in their 401k because they were the best available options. That is not how the selection process works. Employers hire 401k plan administrators, companies that manage the retirement plan infrastructure. Those administrators offer fund menus to employers, and the funds that appear on those menus are often there because the fund companies paid the administrators for access, not because they performed best, not because they charged the least, because they paid for shelf space. The employee sees a list of fund options and assumes the list was curated for their benefit. The list was curated for the administrator's benefit and partially for the fund company's benefit. The employee pays for the arrangement through reduced returns on every dollar they contribute for their entire career. This is not illegal. It is disclosed somewhere in the plan, documents that almost nobody reads, in type small enough to suggest it was not designed to be found. The result is that the average expense ratio across all funds in corporate 401k plans sits meaningfully higher than the expense ratios available on comparable index funds in the open market. The best index funds available today charge between 0.03% and 0.10%. The average actively managed fund in a corporate 401k charges between 0.5% and 1.5%. The difference between those two numbers applied over a 30-year career is the quiet killer. Here is what you actually do right now. And this is the part that matters most, because understanding the problem without acting on it is just an interesting fact that costs you money for the rest of your career. Open your 401k. Find the list of funds you currently own. For each fund, find the fund details or fund fact sheet. You are looking for a number labeled expense ratio or net expense ratio. It will be expressed as a percentage. Write down every expense ratio for every fund you currently own. If any of your expense ratios are above 0.5%, you're being charged significantly more than necessary for the exposure you are getting. If they are above 1%, you're in the highest cost tier of retirement investing, and the compounding math is working against you in a serious way every single year. Now look at the full list of fund options available in your plan, not just the ones you currently own, but every option on the menu. Most 401k plans, even one dominated by high-fee, actively managed funds, include at least one low-cost index fund option. Usually it tracks the S&P 500 or the total stock market. Usually its expense ratio is well below 0.20%, and sometimes below 0.10%. That fund has been available to you since you enrolled. It has been sitting on the menu the whole time. Quietly. Next to the high-fee options that got the better description, the longer track record presentation, and the more prominent placement in the enrollment materials. Once you find the lowest cost fund available in your plan, you have two moves. First, redirect all future contributions to go into that fund. Second, consider moving your existing balance, a process called rebalancing or reallocating, into the lower cost option as well. The second move requires a brief look at any potential tax implications of selling existing fund holdings inside a 401k. Though inside a traditional 401k, there are generally no immediate tax consequences for moving between funds. The money stays in the tax-advantaged account. The only thing that changes is which fund it is invested in and how much of your return you keep going forward. Here is something worth sitting with before we close this out. The expense ratio on the funds in your 401k was set before you enrolled. It has been collecting every day since your first contribution. The fund companies received their fee whether the market went up or down, whether you had a good year or a bad one, whether you were watching your account or not. The fee ran automatically, invisibly, and continuously, and the compounding math on that fee has been working against your retirement for every year you have been invested. You did not sign up for this knowingly. Nobody explained it clearly during enrollment. The enrollment materials showed you past performance charts and fund descriptions. They did not show you a 30-year projection of what a 1% annual fee does to a $200,000 balance, because if they had, and that is the thing about the quiet killer, it is quiet because silence is more profitable than transparency. Go back to that Sunday afternoon, the 401k balance that made you feel responsible and on track. The balance is real, the growth is real, the discipline that built it is real, and it deserves credit. But sitting inside that balance, in the details of every fund you own, is a number you probably never checked. And now that you know it exists, checking it takes about 2 minutes. Fixing it takes about 15. You were never just invested. You were invested and being charged. The only question was how much and whether you knew it. Now you know. The rest is 15 minutes of your Sunday afternoon.